All right. Apparently, I'm live. And if that's the case, please let me know so that way I can kind of get this whole show rolling. And if you want to let me know in the chat, if you can hear me, if you can see me, if things sound okay, look okay, all that good stuff, I would appreciate it. Let's see. Harbor Prepper says 5x5. So we are sounding and looking good. Durgan says 5x5 as well. Good to see everybody. Liberty Off Road is here. Frank Newmas is here. Toto Pulling Back Curtain is here. Weight Loss Prepper, you're also here. So, good to see everybody. And obviously, we have a lot to talk about. There's a lot going on, a lot of moving parts. And we also know that what we prepare for is basically related to this exact scenario possibly occurring. So we always want to pay attention when things are getting the hottest, when things are getting right on the edge of possibly moving into a new territory, which we could easily call a real life SHTF. Now, Nomad Prepper says, hello, Dante, all good. Colt Leader, hello. And Colt Leader, I actually like that name quite a bit, but try your best not to do the whole Jim Jones thing, please. Now, let's get things going. All right. So we know that there's a lot of stuff going on, and we know that certain people within our own government have a lot of power when it comes to what our future is going to look like. And so obviously this is what I want to discuss tonight, because this whole global conflict scenario just keeps getting more and more likely, at least in my opinion. And I think that one thing we're doing to ourselves, not just in the prepper community, but also in general as Americans, is believing in the overconfidence that nothing will ever happen here and nobody would ever do anything to us because of who we are or what we are, whatever you want to call it. But at the end of the day, I think that that is a dangerous concept to always strategize with. To always assume that we're invincible and that we're untouchable is going to eventually lead to being touched, which not everybody likes. So let's go ahead and talk about what's going on here, okay? And this is exactly why we need to pay attention. We know about the Nancy Pelosi trip going on with Taiwan, and she's supposed to arrive there Tuesday night local time. And just so everybody's aware, it is about 10 in the morning there right now, or no, it's 9:30 in the morning there. So basically we have about 12 hours or less to find out if she's going to land there and then what that's going to look like. Okay. So China military posts missile strike video as Taiwan preps for Pelosi arrival. And basically what we're hearing is that our own government, as well as the Taiwanese government, is saying that, yes, she is coming here. Yes, we are prepared for her arrival, and that she will be here Tuesday night after visiting Malaysia. Now, things we need to understand is that China put out this propaganda-style video of them showing off some military might and talking about how America is a problem, basically. And they don't make these videos for us. It's not like some of these other organizations out there that want to, drive fear into our hearts or want to share their propaganda throughout the Western hemisphere or whatever it is. These videos are made specifically for their own people. They want their own people to understand what it is that they're conceiving in the sense of what they're willing to do or what they're planning. And this is not something that a lot of people consider, but we're getting this information because it was leaked to us, basically, because they have a very authoritarian approach when it comes to the internet and free speech and everything else related to that. But we're getting this information because, well, let's be honest, because we're being allowed to in many ways. Now, let's see here. So let's talk about some of this video that they put out. Okay, we know this whole thing has been going on. The saber rattling, if she shows up here, we might do something drastic and all of that happening. But what is it that they're actually trying to put out there for their people to understand exactly where they stand in regards to our intervention in their, what they consider domestic policies regarding Taiwan? Well, they showed in this video quite a bit of military action, okay? So real quick, I'll go ahead and read this. Those who will play with fire will perish by it. We would like to once again admonish the U.S. that we are fully prepared for any eventuality, and the PLA will never sit idly by, Zhao said, referring to Pelosi's or the People's Liberation Army. Definitely not Pelosi's Liberation Army, because I'm pretty sure that doesn't exist. Now, I don't know why this is trying to get me to share a selection. So in a show of force, the PLA's Eastern Theater Command posted video on state media sites Monday that showed the military conducting exercises involving aircraft carriers, helicopters, and jet planes flying in formation, frogmen rising from the ocean, heavily armed soldiers running through wooded areas, and squads of paratroopers descending from a blue sky. Now, this is an article from the New York Post, and I don't believe that the term frogmen is correctly applied to these soldiers, but that is what they literally wrote here. So it wasn't me saying that. Now you can see they have imagery of military males, ready to fight, obviously, brandishing weapons. They have artillery. Then they over here start showing some of their missiles, and these are clearly, longer range missile systems that they're showing as well. And this is all in this video that was put out on state-run media to remind their people as to what they're willing to do or what it is they're planning for in case things go south and in case America keeps pushing the envelope based on what it is that we're already doing. And my biggest concern about this whole scenario is that there's a lot riding on this at this point in time. And for the Chinese government to put out information like this and then to basically not do anything if we were to actually cross that line in the sand would be very bad for them in the sense of maintaining their control and their power and their respect. So I don't see them literally doing nothing. Now, here's the thing you have to keep in mind. There is I would say, some kind of, obviously there's a lot of backhanded dealings and everything else that goes on with governments and officials within governments and everything else. But I would say that there's a strange level of confidence in the United States acting as if, China won't do it. They're not going to do anything, right? And that is interesting to me because at the end of the day, we're the ones who didn't do anything when lines were crossed in the sand. If you don't remember, during the Obama administration, there were some issues going on in Syria where lines were crossed and there really wasn't any real retaliation. So that being said, this is not what I expect from China. I don't expect them to literally be putting out false rhetoric. I actually believe they are going to do something if they're forced to, and they have said it enough times and put it out enough publicly for them to now have to follow through with those threats. And that should concern you. It should concern all of us because once they follow through, things get very, very dicey very quickly. And I think that because of the way our country and our government views itself, that there really is still some sort of belief out there that like no one would try it. They won't try it, right? I don't know anymore. And I'm not going to bet on that in my own personal preparedness, and neither should you. And that's why we need to pay attention to what's happening here right now. Now, is this going to start, global conflict tomorrow if she lands there? I don't know. I hope not. And I don't necessarily think so. But do I think it has the potential to kick something off down the road based on the fact that these actions continually happen and the fact that our government seems to be continually wanting to irritate the dragon and poke the bear and get everybody as upset at us as possible when it comes to other nuclear powers? Yeah, it does seem that way. And it's interesting that currently with our state in the sense of our economy and everything else, one of the only ways that this administration could try to come back from it is probably, through conflict. Because how else do you get people behind you at this point in time during such a failure of an administration? And I'm sorry to say that because it's not about me being politically biased. It's just the truth at this point in time. I am struggling to buy groceries, man. This is ridiculous. The way our country is being treated is terrible. And this is what they're doing. They're literally playing with fire, playing with our futures based on the fact that they don't think the other guy's going to do it. This isn't a poker game. This isn't about bluffing. This isn't about who's got the cooler head. This is literally, I would just call it either weaponized incompetence, or I would say that it is planned and strategically put in place because we know that this has to happen for our economy to eventually come back from the grave that it's in currently. Now, let's go ahead and real quick here, I'm going to share this time with you all just so you have it, just so you have this in mind, okay? So they're saying that tomorrow night she's going to land there local time. So Tuesday night locally, which means right now in Taiwan, it's 9:32 in the morning. So that tells me we have 12 hours or less to find out if this really goes through or not. Just keep that in mind. That's kind of the countdown we're on in regards to what this could look like come tomorrow. Now, got some people in the chat I want to say hello to. Rip Curl Readiness, good to see you. Thanks for being here. We've got Exile Reviews, Northern Girl Hobbies. Thank you, mods, for being here. I really appreciate it, okay? And, a lot of people are going to look at what's happening here and they're going to say, well, like, we don't like her anyway. So, I don't care what happens to her over there. And honestly, for the better, or whatever you want to call it, that doesn't matter in the sense of how you feel about her well-being. What matters is how our government will react to anything happening to her that you and I don't really have a say in at this point in time anymore. And don't be even second guessing the fact that if something happens over there to one of our officials, regardless of who it is or what party they're in. We're going to have people from both parties that are definitely what I would call war hawks, ready to jump at any action they could possibly take. So keep those things in mind. They'll take us right into it if they have the chance to, okay? T-Rex, good to see you. Yes, all is well. Thank you so much for checking in. Storm Rider, I agree. The actions seem reckless, and it's interesting that you have the administration saying, I don't think it's a great idea, and neither does the military, and then this is still happening. So this should tell you, like, this is by design in many ways. We're not doing this just because, like, let's find out. I mean, if something really happens because of this trip, then we know that it was on purpose. Let's be honest. So you guys tell me what you think about that in the chat. But this is not something that you just play around with based on the fact that we're talking about nuclear powers that have recently made threats, have recently done simulations of hypersonic missiles reaching New York City, and have recently done a lot of egregious actions when it comes to encroaching on territory. I mean, look what they're doing in the South China Sea, and look what they do when our carriers or our fleets show up. I mean, they're not just saying hello. That's not how this is going. Now, let's talk about some other things related to the scenario. So based on the fact that we have this happening, then we also know that the other escalations exist. So we have the military drills happening in the Taiwan Strait, which I believe were just a few days ago. And basically what's going on is, they're starting these drills. And of course, all of these are always so well planned in advance that it never necessarily has a timing issue based on current scenarios, but they always seem to just happen right at the right time. And this is, of course, what China was doing. And then letting everyone know that these exercises are, part of our severe consequences if U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi were to visit Taiwan during her trip and upcoming tour of Asia. Now, here's the thing. This is just a show of force. These drills aren't because they're necessary to China being able to be strategically positioned in that region. It's because they want to show us that they really do mean business. And I think people need to understand that they're not screwing around. That's what the thumbnail of tonight's video was. Like, they don't just assume they're just talking. Don't just assume that this is just saber rattling. Don't assume that. This isn't North Korea, okay? We're not talking about some rogue nation that has an overinflated ego about what they're capable of. This is China, who has a very good idea of what they're capable of, and also owns half of the things that are in our homes right now, or at least manufactures them. And I don't know about you, but the fact that there's small transponder chips within most of our modern electronics that were manufactured there has a little bit of concern for me, as it should for you. Not to mention the fact that it's very public knowledge the easiest way to take down the United States is via the power grid. So there's a lot of things here that I don't think we should underestimate. And I think a lot of people are going to find themselves in a difficult position if they always brush off these threats, and then eventually one of them comes to fruition and they'll just say, wow, I can't believe that happened. Why can't you believe that happened? Because you had this overinflated confidence about being an American and being in the United States. And I think that the world has obviously changed quite a bit over the last couple of years. And we're at a point now where we have to admit that things are possible and that we aren't as invincible as we like to assume. So this drill was happening. And then just to kind of verify some of the escalation here in that region and everything else going on, we also had Taiwan holding the same drill, or basically similar drills, in anticipation of a hostile Chinese scenario occurring in their area, right? And then this is still talking about Pelosi going over there and considering the trip there. So we have both countries conducting military drills at this time in anticipation of possibly having to act upon something that the United States is doing. It's not even about, Taiwan's constantly doing drills in order to get their people prepared for an inevitable Chinese invasion. It's not about a possible one. It's literally an inevitable one. And this wolf and badger ad over here, I hope that doesn't necessarily reflect on the things I've been looking at, but you guys, understand that sometimes I like to wear things that you wouldn't believe, okay? I'm just going to let you roll with that one because it made me at least laugh a little bit. Now, here's the other thing that we have to understand is that while these drills are going on, it's saber rattling, yes, of course, but it's also posturing. And each side is now posturing for, well, if you do this, we're going to do that. And if this happens, we're going to have to do this. And they're preparing for it. And what many people will tell you, especially when you're talking about like a tactical drill. Let's just say, you're trying to do anything, in the realm of like tactics or whatnot. You don't want to do it the first time when you have to do it. So of course these drills are being done because if they actually have to activate and make this happen, they're going to be ready that much sooner to do something because they've been doing this now for or in recent time. They've been doing it over the last few days. It's not something they did 6 months ago. It's literally just happened, so they know how they're going to respond exactly, and everybody's on the same page. So just keep that in mind. It's not about any pre-planned drills that were already in the works and blah blah blah. This is all timing related for reasons. Okay. And Nomad Prepper, yes, I believe that is exactly what I said. So. And Porky Prepper, tactical undergarments for magic. Exactly, because Commando is the most tactical, as everyone knows. Now, that being said, we also have our administration coming in and saying, well, we're not going to have that, right? So, of course, this adds fuel to the fire. They're playing around with fire. They're playing around with our future, and they're apparently okay with the idea of this escalating into something much worse because they're going to keep pushing it, even though we know as average Americans that this seems like a bad idea and bad timing, because right now our country's in a difficult situation. But hey, while we sell our strategic oil reserves, let's go ahead and escalate possible conflicts in the future. Seems like a great idea. The White House says we will not be intimidated by China as it all but it confirms Nancy Pelosi's Taiwan trip. John Kirby asks, what's the drama of her visit after Chinese state media issued chilling warning and Red Army posted war video? Now, I don't know exactly who wrote this or what editor allowed this grammatical salad to get through, but that is exactly what it said, and that's why I had a hard time reading it, because I just didn't feel like it flowed correctly. But that being said, we have, John Kirby saying, the Pentagon will make sure that Pelosi is safe and secure, and it doesn't mark a change in Taiwan policy. Okay, saying that you're going to guarantee somebody's security isn't something you can necessarily do, especially when you're talking about another foreign power with a military might that can, very much, equal some of the other larger powers in the world. And not to mention they are nuclear capable. So just keep that all in mind. But basically, this is now our administration saying that, we're going to have to watch this very closely and that we will not tolerate anything happening to her in that time period of her being over there. Now, I don't like what it is that we're doing here. Look at how quickly this could escalate into something much worse. This is, literally Franz Ferdinand 2.0, possibly. It just depends on how you want to look at it. But all I know is that we have evidence that China's willing to do something because that's what they said. And these aren't countries that just say things to say them. This isn't North Korea and this isn't Iran. This is literally China. They're the future economic superpower of the world, even if I don't like that. And I don't like that. And I think there's a possibility of us actually stopping that from happening at some point in time, but not with our current leadership and not with the people in power and not with the way corporate America is running the country. So I am concerned about that, definitely. And look, we are seeing all the propaganda here and seeing all this stuff going on. And I don't like what it is they're trying to do, because like I said, this wasn't meant for you and I to watch. This wasn't meant for us. This was meant for their own people to be on board with what they may have to do here in the near future and to get morale boosted across their population in anticipation of a possible action. So, but don't worry, we won't be intimidated by them. I don't know, man. It's not about intimidation and it's not about, pride at this point in time. To me, this is about, sensibilities. And I don't feel like this is a sensible approach to the current scenario that we're all watching happen. But here we are. So what do I know? I'm just some guy who sits on the internet and talks about things sometimes. But I also am just a regular American. So I feel like my opinion on it should at least have some value, in the sense of, I don't think it's a good idea, because I'm a logical person that can just look at things exactly for what they are presented as and then say, why are we doing this? You tell me. Especially because, of all people, it's somebody who is Swamp City, right? And who is probably embedded with Chinese foreign operatives already. Look at Dianne Feinstein. I'm pretty sure she was riding around with a Chinese spy as her driver. And then, Pelosi's from the same area, same district, really, if you want to look at it that way. Although I know one's a senator and one's a congressman or congresswoman. But that being said, you understand where I'm coming from on this. So now, let's see. Amelia, I'm glad you're enjoying the commentary. I'm trying my best to kind of keep things moving forward and keep information flowing while maintaining a level of entertainment, because we all still have to enjoy ourselves while we can, right? And I want you all to enjoy these conversations. It shouldn't just be like, you should be scared to death, now run out and buy a bunch of canned food. Like, that's not the purpose of these conversations. The purpose here is to motivate preparedness and to raise awareness of current situations that we should be concerned about. And that's just what I'm trying to do. Okay. Now, Mike McDonald, those guys, they'll be on the channel one of these days in the future. Again, I'm sure. I haven't had Pinball on before, but I have had Angry Prepper on before. And, you know, I'm getting back to having guests on at some point in time here, but things have just been kind of tight and kind of crazy. And I'm having a hard enough time just doing my own thing, to be completely honest with you. So we'll see how it goes. Oida Tudiant, thanks for being here. And thanks for agreeing with me, even if it's not always what we have to do here. You don't have to agree with me, everyone, if you don't. Trust me, I fully don't agree with everything every other prepper channel says. But what I do is I absorb all the information I can so I can make better opinions on what's happening, at least in my own mind. Let's see here. Indepreptant, nobody, Pelosi, I'm on my way. Yes. And that was a very well executed super chat meme. So thank you for doing that. You nailed it. And then I did miss another super chat earlier, which I feel bad about. Rural 2IC, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Now, let's talk about some other things that are happening. So here's something just to keep in mind about just how quickly these things can kind of escalate and how this organization of the globe is falling apart in many ways. Okay, there's these unwritten rules that everybody's supposed to follow, at least according to NASA, right? So earlier this week, we had a Chinese rocket fall to Earth. And basically, China didn't share with NASA like where it was going to fall. Basically said, oh, well, it's falling, and expected NASA to kind of try to figure out on their own, like, hey, is this going to hit us? Is it going to hit somewhere important? Or is it going to hurt people? Like, what's happening here? And China said, don't worry about it. It's not your business, right? So this should tell everybody that we are disconnected in the sense of that type of communication. It should also give you some pause for concern, because why are they trying to avoid making their plans regarding their space program public to entities like NASA? These are things you should at least consider. I'm not saying that there was anything nefarious per se going on with this rocket, but if you get people into the motion and into the comfort zone of just assuming that, yeah, China launched a rocket and it's falling back down, and, you know, they're not sharing that info with us anymore, but every time it's fallen in, you know, the Indian Ocean or wherever else it might end up, well, that gets everybody comfortable with the idea of just letting them do their own thing. And then eventually there is an easy opportunity for something else to come from space that might not be exactly what it seems, and nobody's there to check it, and no communication is established in order to make sure everybody's on the same page, because we've gotten used to the idea of that not existing anymore. So this is something that you should be doing too. When you look at this stuff happening along with everything else that's going on, there is a basically step back from this whole international concept. We already have Russia saying they're leaving the International Space Station by, I think, 2024, right? So that being said, you have these countries that have space programs and have nuclear power and are all pulling away from each other, saying, well, I'm not too worried about letting you know what's going on. And this is just some consideration I thought you should keep in mind. And when you're looking at the news and you're looking at what's happening out there, and then you can start to put it all together with the current environment, you can kind of see why this could be problematic in the future, and why getting entities like NASA comfortable with the idea of not really knowing what's happening with other space programs and with rockets falling back to Earth and things of that nature, it opens up a door of opportunity to let other things come down from space that maybe we don't want. That's just one of the things I wanted to let you know about. I mean, this should show you the level of escalation we're at. If they're not even telling us about benign rockets falling back to Earth, then you should kind of see where our relationship is at that point, right? And the relationship is not doing well. So we need to understand that there's no reason for them to try to keep it going in a positive direction when it's already doing badly enough to where they don't care about telling us when rockets are falling back to Earth. Now, GB, thank you for that. I appreciate it. 556. You know, the best part about that number is, although I appreciate the, let's just say, inside joke when it comes to that, I also am sad that I can't even buy any for that amount, you know? And no, please don't send me any more money. That wasn't what I was trying to say. I just think it's funny that we're at that point where, like, that's not how it works anymore, and it's sad and unfortunate, but maybe one day we'll see, maybe 6.8 by 51 will be more affordable one day. No, that's probably never going to happen. So here we are, but what do we do now? Let's go ahead and talk about some things happening domestically, just to get some idea about what else is going on and why we should be aware of the fact that this can really keep going. And Oki Khan says, I don't like literally anything we are doing. Okay. And I agree with you. It seems like we're in a very bad situation when it comes to where things are heading, the trajectory we're currently on, the leadership we currently have. Everything is just garbage. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I don't have a lot of faith. Every time I turn around, it's assault weapons ban, and then it's we're basically seeing if China's going to bluff or not when it comes to doing something drastic, and then it's we're sending money overseas again. It's like we can't get our stuff straight, but every time I turn around, they're doing something negative to you and I, and then doing something outwardly that you and I have no control over that's going to eventually affect us negatively as well. So it's just all negative for us in many ways. I'm not seeing a lot of positive coming our way anytime soon. It really doesn't feel that way. It's as if the inflation we're fighting and the extreme rise in grocery prices, because it doesn't matter if you think $1.50 versus $2 isn't a big difference, right? Oh, well, I mean, it's $1.50, $2, whatever. It's $2 basically, right? But that adds up quickly, and that's still a huge increase in percentage of how much that product costs. And at the end of the day, that $2 still hurts more than $1.50. So that's where we are. And so don't let smaller price points, disguise the level of inflation we're currently at. It is terrible and it's hurting, but they're doing nothing about it. Literally nothing about it. They're just allowing everything to happen from a situation that they created. But then they're also going through and doing all these other negative actions. So it's definitely not what I like. House of Lamar, I'm not necessarily worried about the assault weapons ban. I think it isn't going to really go anywhere in the Senate. But the problem is that, especially what I've noticed with other, gun channels and people who cover some of that information more frequently, is that there's this big level of confidence from that community in like Republicans in general, in the right, when it comes to the officials who are sitting, in Congress and in the Senate and stuff like that. And I get that, because at the end of the day, that's still the better option over the other when it comes to firearms rights. But the problem is that there's this investment in the process that everything will work out because of the process. I'm like, yeah, but I mean, what about the assault weapons ban of 1994? And what about every other thing that they've done to limit and restrict us in what we're capable of? And what about all these people who are going to jail for things that aren't even necessarily firearms, but are being claimed to be so? I mean, this is all going on still. And then the thing I keep hearing is, don't worry, we've got senators and they're Republicans, so we're fine. I just, like, as much as I assume that's probably accurate based on this current scenario, like this exact bill, that doesn't mean I should just trust that process with something as important as our firearms rights. I just don't. And so I'm a little concerned that so many of these firearms channels are literally in bed with like Republicans at this point, more so than just understanding that the government as a whole is failing us in many ways, and that they're putting too much emphasis on who's doing what or who's willing to vote this or that, versus understanding that like nobody's really on our side at this point. Like it's us, like it's just us. So that, I'm sorry, I'm just a little bothered by it, because it seems like, at least in the preparedness community, it seems like we understand pretty well that the government itself is a big part of our problem. But it seems like in the firearms community, they're still like totally fine with, the other side of the aisle, I guess is the best way to say it. Vlad Groots, no, I don't know anything about you being blocked or anything necessarily. So if you're dropping links and stuff like that, that might be the case. But otherwise, I don't see any issues. So I'm not sure, to be honest with you. So sorry, I don't know. Maybe it's a YouTube thing, but I haven't blocked you or anything like that. Now, sorry, me saying that, it just got me a little worked up, because I just seen so much of that lately. Like, don't worry, it's dead in the Senate. You have a lot of faith in these people that don't care about you. That's all I'm trying to say, okay? And yeah, do I think that it's dead in the Senate? Of course I do, just based on numbers and math and midterms coming up and everything else related to that. But it's still passed in the House, which should at least give you some level of concern to say, yeah, I mean, this is at least moving forward. It's not something that just died on arrival. So I don't know. I'm not a big fan. Just my thing. Now, let's go ahead and move on to what is happening domestically because some other stuff's going on that should show you why this level of escalation exists and why we should be concerned and be prepared for this, because our own government's preparing for this exact scenario. Okay, so this guard exercise trains for hypersonic missile attacks on major U.S. cities. So this simulated training program just went through in Philadelphia over the last few days. I believe it started on July 31st or something along those lines. No, July 27th. Sorry, the 31st was yesterday. My mind's a little out there, I guess, right now. But what I'm trying to say is that this whole drill was basically related to exact threats that China is currently making. Hypersonic missiles hitting major cities, possibly with a CBRN threat. And so we have 400 military members and another 150 local, state, and federal emergency workers flood into Philadelphia, where the strike has collapsed Lincoln Financial Field structures and derailed a train at the CSX rail yard, which triggered a chlorine leak that's spreading fast. So they came in, they used their hazmat gear and everything else related to that type of response and did a drill. And of course, you're saying, people in Philadelphia were probably thrown off by, Black Hawk helicopters and stuff flying low over the Delaware River. But at the end of the day, these exercises, they happen regularly. I'm not trying to say that this is directly involved with what's happening right now, but timing matters. And I watch timing and I try to correlate it with what else is happening, because I think that some of these things tend to have a little bit more to them than just coincidental agenda, right? Now, they have all of the everything that you can think of when it comes to what it is they're trying to invoke here, in the sense of a drill that was related to actual real world training based on these types of attacks. But if you listen to this is where things, are a little bit more straightforward. But these types of exercises, with Russia breaking chemical weapons treaties and China fueling hypersonic missile development to defeat U.S. defenses, are sorely needed for the Guard and their local, state, and federal partners in the homeland, officials said. So it is related to what's happening in the world right now as well. It isn't just about, well, this is just training we need to do. They are doing this training specifically with the possibility of these threats being real at some point in time. This is an opportunity to train firsthand with some of the best first responders in the world who do this day in and day out, said Army National Guard Colonel Chris McKinney, TF-46 Chief of Staff. Okay. Now, these things happen. Okay. Think about timing, all right? The most recent series of dense urban terrain-focused CBRN exercises kicked off in 2018. Some version of the event has been held each year since then, while the Guard forces are also responding to the crisis, right? But all I'm trying to say is, this exact scenario kicked off in 2018. Now we're doing it like right now based on things that are very similar to certain threats that we've received in recent time. So all I'm trying to say is that these groups, these entities, these military forces are training for these exact scenarios, and they've been training for them for a long time, but they don't train for these for no reason. They are fully aware of the possibility of this actually happening. But a lot of average Americans, a lot of people like to write off these scenarios and say they'll never do it because of X, Y, and Z. This will never happen because of X, Y, and Z. They'll never do anything here in mainland North America or the United States, but probably North America as well. But the whole concept here is that the military says, no, this could happen, so we're going to train and drill for it, because if it happens, we need to be ready. Everyone likes to forget. 9/11 legit happened, right? I'm probably going to get screwed now because I mentioned it. But all I'm trying to say is that that event occurred and people had to respond to it in the same sense of hazardous materials and first responders and everything else. And that happened here. So I don't understand why so many people are so willing to brush off the idea that something could happen here when things have happened here before. Okay. Now keep this in mind as well. During a crisis of that nature, you will definitely experience martial law. That's just my opinion. And look what happened during World War II in Hawaii. The whole island was under martial law for years, right? So don't be surprised even if something happens far away, that we could find ourselves under martial law in certain areas. And if you're in maybe a U.S. territory, maybe you're in Guam, or maybe you live in Hawaii, or maybe just somewhere in the Pacific, then I would be prepared for a possible martial law scenario based on the fact that if something does happen in Taiwan tomorrow, or today, I guess, that we will likely see some of that occur based on the fact that military scrambling is almost a guarantee at that point. Just my 2 cents. I want everybody to keep these things in mind and try to be prepared for them the same way as, our National Guard is preparing for it, because they are aware of it being a reality. Why are we not, right? Now, let's see. I'm trying to see what everybody's saying here. Irish Rebel, thank you so much. Good to see you as well. Armageddon Depot. If you're going to buy a gas mask, make sure to purchase one made of butyl rubber. And it's true, butyl rubber is better for many reasons. It lasts longer in the sense of like storage life. It's less prone to cracking and things of that nature, but it also creates a better seal for things like mustard gas. So if you want, butyl rubber, it's more resistant to certain gas agents that are out there, which could corrode other types of materials and actually create a leak and then, penetrate your mask. So yes, there is some truth to that. Thanks for bringing that up. Prepper Now, good to see you. Glad you're here. Van City Prepper, thank you so much for that. Let's see. IPAC 9mm. Before your father passed away in 2007 from colon cancer, he said, watch out for China, right? And, sounds like wise words from likely a wise man, because I agree. I think that we have been played in many ways for many, many years, okay? And economic warfare is real. And we have been losing that battle for quite some time when it comes to that particular country. But the other thing to keep in mind is that during that time when they've been cashing in on our money, they've been investing it in their military. Why would they do that? Because we all know why. So don't be, confused or surprised if one day China decides to just flip the switch, okay? And I really do think that's going to happen at some point. Might not happen this year, might not happen in 3 years, 5 years. I mean, we all know 2030 is supposed to have some change in it, right? So just keep all that in mind. But if everything happens the way it's supposed to happen tomorrow, who knows what'll happen afterward? And that's just where we're at. Now, John Johnson, Nasty P. Losi. I had to say it that way just because it made me laugh, and I had a good time with it. Now, and look, I don't even think Democrats like her. I don't think anybody really likes her, so I'm not really sure what the deal is with all of that. But that's just how it works, right? If you're in power and you got money, and then you're in charge. So that being said, let's talk about some other stuff going on here. Now, we know that this just came out, right? Ayman al-Zawahiri was taken out, okay? I said that name terribly because my brain is just trying to go on autopilot, apparently. But what I'm trying to say is that this was something that just came out. Oh, the CIA, they took care of it, and this is a big deal for people who are affected by, 9/11 and stuff like that. And great, great. But it seems like these things tend to happen just perfectly when it comes to timing, when it comes to things like midterms, when it comes to things like low approval ratings, when it comes to all that kind of stuff. There's always something that happens that creates a Go America kind of reaction. So I just wanted to bring that up because I don't buy that our government, doesn't control the timing of a lot of these things at this point in time. We all know they have very many ways and very many tools in their toolbox to be able to do that. So just keep all those things in mind. Do I think it's good when some scumbag is removed from being a threat? Of course I do. Do I think that our current administration needs every single leg up they can possibly get to have any chance of ever looking like they're doing something positively? I do. Unfortunately, I still think that conflict is their only real ticket out of the mess they've created. So that's what really worries me too, is that we are dealing with a administration that is failing and really only has one way out. We all know what that magic button is, and it's not a good one. Okay. Jim Standeffer. I can't read tonight, I guess. Jim Standeffer. If something happens tomorrow, thanks for all your prepping help. No problem. And thank you all for your prepping help too. Look, I make mistakes and I learn from them because of you all. So I appreciate that. Like when I kept saying brown rice in that secret food prepping tip video, I mean, that's a problem. So I fixed it. I went back, I edited the video, made sure I didn't say brown rice anymore because I didn't want any new preppers to mistake that and actually go out and get a bunch of brown rice when I was really referring to parboiled rice, which is completely different in regards to length of storage and things of that nature. But it was just one of those things where I needed your help to catch me on that so I could fix it and not cause a problem for somebody else. At the same time, as you saw in a recent video, when I changed some of my gear and my loadout, it's because I literally want to learn from you all, and I definitely want to progress as somebody who doesn't know everything. I'm not the best at anything. I need people to help me get better. So I appreciate all of you doing that for me as well. Now, we also have the stuff going on in the other part of the world. Okay. So this just happened recently. Okay. All right. So on Navy Day, Putin says the United States is a main threat to Russia. Okay. And in their new military doctrine, which was signed into Russian decree, I guess you would say, they're basically saying that the United States is still their main rival and that will be their biggest obstacle when it comes to their global, maritime power. And that is an issue because we already know that we're causing problems for them right now, and they are just publicly stating like we are enemy number one, and they have to watch out for us, and they have to be ready to deal with us as well. Okay. After inspecting the Navy, Putin made a short speech in which he promised that what he touted as Russia's unique Zircon hypersonic cruise missiles, cautioning that Russia had the military clout to defeat any potential aggressors. Okay. Now, you could say it's more saber rattling, just like what China's saying. Right? Oh, it's just them trying to look tough and trying to posture. Possibly. But I'm not going to just assume that. I don't base any of my strategies off somebody just posturing. This is stuff that's being put out there for us to consume versus the Chinese propaganda that was specifically for their own people. This is literally for us as well, because he knows that this is all being broadcast through European and stateside media all day long, right? They don't have the same kind of, I would just call it almost like an iron curtain in place like China does when it comes to their internet and their media and everything else. But they do control a lot of their media, and they do decide if they want things to be put out there in a certain manner. And of course, that's what they decided. So these are things to keep in mind as we find ourselves still dealing with that crisis overseas. And honestly, luckily for us, we're giving them another $550 million in military aid. Okay. So we got a grain shipment out of Odessa. Great. That's important because people in other parts of the world were starving because of a lot of this grain not existing anymore. We need that port operational if we want any sense of a supply chain to get back online. But at the end of the day, the big takeaway from this article is the fact that we're just giving them another $500 million. Okay. $500 million in military aid. So clearly they need it because they're not going to win a war of attrition with Russia. That's just not going to happen. But we keep poking the bear every time we send money over there, every time we send equipment over there, every time we send anything over there with our name on it. It is being used as a weapon against Russia, which means that, enemy of our enemy kind of a deal. They're not going to look at us any differently than they are at the people they're currently invading. We are asking for it in many ways. And I don't understand how we changed our military doctrine to say we're no longer positioned to fight, a two-front war, right? We only can really afford to fight, one war front at a time anymore. And then poke the bear and irritate the dragon at the same exact time, right? We can make everybody pissed at us that has all of the reasons to be pissed at us already and has the nuclear capability to actually fight us. Not just, be mad at us, but can literally fight us. Now, they might lose, but will both of them lose? You tell me. But this is what we're doing. This is why I'm having so many issues with people who just keep saying, don't worry, nothing's going to happen. Your own government is doing all the things that are going to make something happen. We keep being told by Russia, don't do this, or we're going to do something. We keep being told by China, don't let her come here, or we're going to do something. We keep being told exactly what's going to happen, and we keep doing it. Now, some of you will say, well, that's because I can't do anything about it. We're going to do whatever we want because we're the United States and we're exceptional, and that's all there is to it. And I totally understand that mindset. I really do. But at this point in time, with our economy in the position that it's currently in, and with the world in its economic position after this crisis, which, although it may have come from a certain area, it also was reacted to by the leaders around the world in a certain way that hurt the economy the most. Now we are in this position where we're just ticking off the two people that have the biggest reasons to do something about us. Okay. So this is where we are. Okay. Now, the Russian Navy would soon be armed with hypersonic missiles. All right. You see what I'm saying? These hypersonics are a big deal, and China's talking about them too. And we're talking about them in the sense of preparing drills for reacting to one hitting a major U.S. city. This is a big deal because these hypersonic missiles are hard to defend from. And that is the whole concept behind them. And then what do you do with those hypersonic missiles? I doubt they're meant for population centers as much as they're meant for strategic military installations in order to limit the ability of a counterattack. That being said, doesn't mean they can't hit a major city if they don't want to, right? This is what I'm trying to put together here for everybody. Trying to let you know we are escalating all the things happening in the world. It's not China and it's not Russia. I mean, yeah, are they doing things that are questionable and probably wrong? Of course they are. Do I like that China's buying a ton of farmland all around me here in North Dakota? Do I like that Bill Gates is buying up a ton of farmland all around me here in North Dakota? No, I don't. I don't think that's a good thing at all. But that's what's happening. Either way, we are literally doing the things that they're saying they're willing to go to war for, and we're doing them again and again and again. And at some point, somebody's going to say, I've had enough, right? It's like the kid at school who gets beat up all the time and eventually loses it and fights back and actually whoops the bully's ass. That is exactly what I'm concerned about happening at some point in time. You push anyone too far to the edge and they react. It doesn't matter if we're talking about China or Russia or anybody. You push them too far and things can happen, all right? Now, let me jump back in the chat here for a second. Kevin Brown says 12 gauge is best. Depends on what you're talking about, I guess. For pheasant, yeah. You know, for geese, yeah. Shoot, for bears, if you're just worried about defending yourself rather than hunting, yeah. I mean, 12 gauge can do a lot of great stuff. It's definitely not my go-to, though, if it comes to self-defense. I'm not going to lie. It's just not. But that's just my opinion. All right. So, and just Steve D, I'm trying to watch my language. I said the A word. I mean, come on. What am I supposed to do? That's like literally in like kids shows nowadays, okay? It just is what it is. I'm trying here, man. I appreciate you guys having a good time with me. Trust me. Now, let's see. Jim Standeffer says the nuclear clock is 90 seconds to midnight. Sacco Mag. Yes, I do reload. I don't reload as much as I should because I'm not going to lie to you. I don't have time. It takes a lot of time, and I just don't have the time to do it all. I have kids, and I have a lot of responsibilities, and I do a lot. And honest to God, it sounds ridiculous, I know, but sometimes when you're doing YouTube, you make a 5-minute video, and it took 4 or 5 hours out of your day. You know, I mean, this is just how things work, but that's just where we are. Okay, so. And yes, I do reload. And what I will say about reloading is it's a great skill to have. And I think it's important for a long-term SHTF scenario. And I think you could technically save some money based on what caliber you're looking into. But it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and you have to pay attention because I won't tell you how many times I've seen reloads create a squib or something along those lines because of somebody not putting powder in the cartridge or forgetting to, seat the bullet properly or whatever else it was. So I take my time, and right now I primarily reload 460 Smith & Wesson because it's a straight wall, easy cartridge to deal with. It's easy to case prep, and it's just kind of fun knowing I'm making something that can do that much damage. But that's just me. All right, so moving on. We have this other situation which was really hyped in the media, which kind of made me question why it was hyped so much. But it's something that we can definitely discuss. So we had the whole Kosovo situation going on. Now, the NATO peacekeepers oversee removal of roadblocks in Kosovo. Now, the thing about Kosovo that everyone needs to understand is that Russia doesn't consider Kosovo a sovereign country. Okay, so NATO being involved there can create certain issues based on some of these other countries' concepts regarding who's who, right? And this is very much very much like a China-Taiwan type situation. So we have Serbia and Kosovo have lots of issues, let's just say, and they're having some protests based on the fact that Kosovo is trying to basically make Serbians get licensing and everything for their vehicles from the Kosovo or Kosovan government. Okay, now that was all postponed because NATO and the U.S. came in and said, let's just not create more problems here right this second, please. But we had these roadblocks going on where they were basically saying we're not doing it and we're not going to do anything with the Kosovo government. And like I said, Russia doesn't consider Kosovo to be a real country. So that makes you question what they are going to look at when it comes to NATO being involved with these scenarios. These are just things to keep in mind that are happening right now. More escalations, more NATO involvement with places that could create a tinderbox of more problems. And that's just why we need to actually pay attention to this, because every day I get comments on the channel, even from old videos, that someone says, well, this is never going to happen, and here's why. And some of the explanations actually have some good sense to them, so I can appreciate that. But I literally just can't operate under the never going to happen doctrine anymore. And I also feel like right now is the most likely time for something to actually happen. I don't know why people are so opposed to the idea. It's not about, this stuff happens all the time. Like, this doesn't happen all the time. The last 2 years don't happen all the time. We're in a very dire scenario, and people just want to believe that things will just get back to normal and move on. But I don't see it happening that way. Okay. Now, Steven's story says maybe people should do more prepping and not worried about a so-called bad W. And I get it, but that's kind of what we do here. Most of what we do is prepping so that we don't have to be as worried about anything that happens. But without paying attention to what is going on and without having the anticipation of certain events having more of a likelihood of existing, then we can't react to them properly when they do occur. So that is something that we should keep in mind. I saw earlier, I'm not sure who necessarily said it, but I did see somebody say like, oh, I got my hazmat suits out just in case, right? Like, totally fine. Am I going to tell everybody they should do that? No, that's not what I'm going to do. But what I'm going to say is that I like that proactivity. I like being proactive with current scenarios and then saying, okay, since this is all happening, maybe I should verify some things in my preps. Maybe I should make sure that my Faraday cages are all set up. Maybe I should make sure things are topped off in the sense of gas and all my batteries are fully charged. Just stuff like that. I can totally be on board with that. Maybe I should rearrange my preps a little bit to have a priority system as to what I most likely will need based on what's currently happening, right? If I know a hurricane's about to hit, I won't need a CBRN kit. But if I'm worried about China launching some kind of crazy hypersonic missile at a population center, then I want my CBRN kit to be a little bit more accessible. So all those things come into play, and I think that that's totally reasonable. So just wanted to mention that, all right? Now, let's go ahead and move into some other stuff happening right now in the country. This is the part where we talk about why prepping is still important, even if it doesn't move us into territories of like global conflict, right? So we just had this flooding in Kentucky. 37 people have perished in this flood, right? That's a really large number of people. Natural disasters still are a huge threat to us, okay? And 37 people dying because of these floodwaters is a tragedy. So, obviously this is happening in Eastern Kentucky. It's just insane that this is happening to people here in the country right now with everything else that's going on. So don't forget for a second that preparing isn't always about these giant global catastrophes. Sometimes things happen suddenly that you never expected, and you better be ready to react to them, or you could be somebody who doesn't make it out. And this is a very difficult situation for a lot of people. And I hope that all the people who are affected by this find what they need or are able to survive the scenario they're being presented with. But this is just a reminder as to why it's so important for us to still prepare for even basic things like natural disasters, because they're going to keep happening no matter what else is going on in the world. And we also have the McKinney fire happening in California right now. 2 people have perished from that. And we have 55,000 acres burning, right? So it's the largest fire of the year so far. And obviously California is always on fire, but this is still tragic for the people who are affected by it. And just because people are in California doesn't mean, that they deserve to have their houses burned down. We used to live in California in a fire zone. It's very hard to get homeowners insurance, but we almost had to evacuate one time. And literally the difference of our evacuation line was the street across from us. So if you lived on one side of the street, you evacuated. If you lived on the other, you were on standby. So we were on standby. It's very scary, and it's very disheartening to know people are coming back to their homes being completely annihilated. So these things are still happening right now, even with all of the global tension going on. So don't forget that prepping isn't always about, well, World War III is not going to happen. Okay, well, what about a wildfire? What about a flood? What about these things that are literally happening to people right this second, right now here in the United States? We're not immune to disasters. We're not invincible, but likelihood of a natural disaster hitting you is probably higher than some kind of global catastrophe. However, we're not immune to those either. So operate under the same type of guidelines. Yes, this wildfire could happen to me. So could some type of foreign attack, okay? It just is what it is. We got to be prepared for a little bit of everything. And the other thing that needs to be considered that a lot of people don't always think about, but I'm sure they're aware of without necessarily considering it, is the idea that post SHTF scenario, post global catastrophe, these wildfires and these floods and these natural disasters are still going to be happening too. So you're going to be trying to survive whatever created the scenario you're dealing with, and you're going to be dealing with the natural side effects of just being on the planet Earth. So that is something else you always need to keep in mind, because floods and fires and storms aren't going to just go away because World War III happened, right? So always keep that in mind as well. And especially if things fall apart and actually make it to the point of a full-on collapse, then you're definitely not going to have firefighting. You're definitely not going to have any of the mitigation projects that go on right now to try to divert some of these disasters away from humanity. You're not going to have any of that happening. None of these forestry services are going to be occurring or anything along those lines that help mitigate disasters when they do occur. So these disasters will be unchecked and likely more damaging and devastating than during normal times, which right now I wouldn't necessarily consider normal times, but I will say that we are in at least an interesting part of our history. Okay. I do want to say I had another YouTube prepper reach out to me, and that was Eric over at Rule the Wasteland. I don't know if you know about his channel or not, but he's been around for a really long time, been preaching preparedness and all kinds of stuff for a very long time. And he reached out to me just to say hi, and then talking about something that he put together. And it's actually this cool little deluxe survival fishing kit. Now, I think we all have something similar to this, like in our bug out bags or something like that. If you're never coming home again, it's good to be able to have a way to get some kind of sustenance. And fish tend to be more, at least sometimes, more accessible than other types of game. But what I was going to say is I'm going to actually give one of these away to somebody here in the chat tonight, because I thought that it was cool that he sent a couple of these over for me to check out. I like him as just another prepper. I try to support anybody in our community if I can. And he actually sells these on Amazon as well as on his website. So I think that's cool too. And anytime, someone in our community is trying to be entrepreneurial and put something out there that can maybe help some of us here, survive a situation, I find value in that, and I can appreciate it. So I put a link to his product through Amazon right in the chat right now if you guys want to check it out. And then if you guys want to, Chief, I'm not going to post my lower build because that actually isn't necessarily like allowed per se. I could do it, but I would probably get smacked down pretty hard for doing so. And I already lived that life about a year ago, and it wasn't the most fun, I will admit that. So, but that being said, and thanks for the cool Red Dawn movie poster. That thing is a painting, actually, or at least a canvas print of a painting. And it's like ugly in a good way. So, and it's Red Dawn, so I can't go wrong. But if you guys want this little survival fishing kit and you're into it, put it in the chat right now. Do hashtag RTW, Rule the Wasteland, because he's the guy who sent it over. And like I said, I just think it's cool to help support each other in the community. So hashtag RTW if you guys want it, and I'll pick somebody here at random. And then I do want to let you know that at his website, which is rulethewasteland.com, he sells those there too, not just through Amazon. But if you want to buy it there, he actually set up the code MAGIC to get you 10% off. And I don't get paid for it or anything like that. It's not some kind of like commission deal or something. This is just, two preppers chatting about YouTube and stuff. And then me being willing to put it out there because I thought it was cool. And, I appreciate when people send me stuff like this to check out, but I also appreciate supporting other community members. I don't care what it is that, we agree on or disagree on or anything like that. The more people in the preparedness community, the better. So lots of RTWs coming through, blowing my mind. So let's see here. I am looking at, oh man, I'm scrolling. There's so many. Just give me a second here. I'm going to pick somebody out here at random. I'm going to fall here. Let's see. What is that? It says all right, Texas Gold Bull, RTW. Boom. Texas Gold Bull. You win. That's how we're doing this. I just picked it at random. I don't think I've ever seen your name before. And if that's rude of me because you are here all the time, then I apologize. But TX Gold Bull, make sure you send me an email and make sure you, and that's magicprepper@gmail.com. You can also just send me a contact form right through my website. And by the way, guys, if I don't get back to you from emails or the contact form, I'm incredibly swamped by these messages at times, and sometimes maybe the response doesn't necessarily need to be warranted. Sometimes sending me the info and letting me digest it is good, and I maybe just forgot to say thanks. So I apologize if I don't get back to you right away. It's hard. I literally run this show. I run YouTube. I run everything by myself. I don't have a team. I don't have an editor. I don't have a cameraman. I don't have a website designer. I don't have a social media manager. I literally don't have anything. I do it all on my own. So I appreciate all the support I get because it's a lot of work, but it's also very rewarding. And I can't believe I get to be part of this awesome community. So yeah, TX Gold Bull, I appreciate it. I'm glad you won. And like I said, make sure you check out rulethewasteland.com, or at least check out that Amazon link I posted, just because I think it's cool to support other preppers. And it is a cool little fishing kit. It's got quite a bit of stuff in it. It's got, multiple types of line with different tensile strengths. It's got lots of hooks and, all the stuff you would expect to have in a survival kit. And it's pretty small. You can see in my hand here that it's not very big. So you can throw it into like a go bag or a bug out bag pretty easy. Hey, it is what it is. Thanks for supporting another prepper. I appreciate it. Now, let's see. There's a lot of FJB in the chat tonight. I see that. Welcome to the party, I guess. And that's just what happens when your government and your leadership starts to fail you or has already failed you. Then what do you expect from people? I don't know what to say, but it is what it is. Now, I do want to say that I am very appreciative of all of you, but it is at the hour mark. So I think we're going to wrap it up. Keep an eye on this situation. And like I said, 12 hours or less looks like the timing that we're being told we should expect a landing there. So if that landing occurs, what then? That's something you're going to have to tell me, because I literally don't know at this point. But I do know I'm prepared to deal with whatever the repercussions might be, and I'll adapt to any environment that is thrown my way, because that's what I have to do. That's what prepping is. We are ready to go. So without anything else to say about it, that's going to be it for Magic Prepper.